Hello and welcome to Southeastern 14. I'm your host, Chris Lee, here to preview and predict SEC baseball games this week. And we've already done two series. Tennessee and Florida's got its own video. Arkansas and Kentucky has its own video. You can get those on our channel. And I'm going to do the remaining five. I will do them in this order, which is decided by the order in which the SEC has listed them on the schedule. They are Alabama at Mississippi State, Ole Miss at Auburn, Vanderbilt at Georgia, Texas A&M at LSU, and South Carolina at Missouri. So before I get into those, a reminder, this is presented by BetOnline, your number one source for all summer sports this season, from Major League Baseball, golf, the NBA, and NHL playoff stats. All the latest news and scores available to follow on your favorite teams. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest team matchups, player props, and odds on just about every sport out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on all the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Okay, we will start with Alabama's trip to Mississippi State. I will start, I think, in most cases with the visiting team and a little bit of a breakdown of each roster. So in this case, we will start with Alabama. The Crimson Tide did not play in the midweek. They come off a win, a loss, and a win in that order last weekend at Ole Miss. And this is a lineup that's pretty good. You've got some really good hitters in there, including Matt Cassetti, the catcher, who seems like he's hit really well lately. Gage Miller is a top 10 hitter in the league. He's the JUCO transfer who mans third for them. Shortstop Justin LeBron has been one of the better freshmen in the league. Not just defensively, but certainly offensively. And then you've got some other good guys out there who are pretty fair too. Ian Petrutz, TJ McCants, both transfers who played well. DH Cade Snell has hit well. And they've got a little bit of a bench. Some guys too. It drops off from there after their starting lineup. But this is a lineup that will go lefties: Will Hodo, Bryce Eblin, Petrutz, McCants, and Evan Slate, and Snell. So really that's probably six lefties you will see in that lineup for the Crimson Tide. The pitching staff: Greg Ferrone, their Friday night starter, one of the more impressive pitchers in the league this year, probably one of the less talked about guys. He's got an ERA of 3.10. Zane Adams has slid to that number 2 spot. He's got a 4.43 ERA. He's another lefty like Ferrone. Has pitched very well lately. They've put right-hander Ben Hess in the number 3 spot. Hess really has not pitched well lately. He's a talented kid, but he's had trouble with putting guys on base. 18% free pass rate. From there, their bullpen has not been one of the better ones in the league, but they do have some guys there. Alton Davis has flashed at times. Braylon Myers has flashed at times. They will probably go maybe even 8 or 9 deep in the bullpen for the weekend. So probably the lineup a little bit stronger than the pitching right now for the Crimson Tide. But that number 1-2 punch of Ferrone and Adams, it can be pretty good. And if you can get a good Ben Hess-like start out of Ben Hess, at least the Ben Hess that people thought they were getting, Alabama can be a tough out. The Crimson Tide, of course, ranked in the top 25 of every human rankings and computer poll this week. All right, let's talk about Mississippi State. This is a team that I thought has been a little bit underappreciated. The lineup has not hit the way top to bottom I think a lot of people have thought it would hit, but Hunter Hines had the kind of weekend against Vanderbilt last weekend with 3 home runs that has gotten the production up more towards where most people thought it would be. Their carrying guy in that lineup this year has been Dakota Jordan, who did not hit well last weekend, but they won without him. Jordan is a potential first rounder. Hunter Hines is going to be drafted pretty high too. You go through the rest of that lineup, and they've got some quality hitters there. David Mershon has been really good at shortstop and has been a guy that's delivered some clutch hits and gets on base at a 4.41 clip and has also stolen 20 bags while he's been on. Connor Hysack, their center fielder, same kind of guy, pretty good on base percentage, a little bit of pop, 7 home runs, 8 steals. Mershon stole 20 bases. So this is a lineup that's pretty good in balance. The bottom third of it has struggled a little bit, so they can be pitched around a little bit. You'd like to see Amani Larry having a better year. Hasn't happened so far, but he's got some talent. But it's a lineup that delivered when it mattered last week in a series win at Vanderbilt. The pitching, I think their rotation, Cal Steven, Gerangelo, St. Jah, a really, really good 1-2 punch. Brooks Auger pitched in the 2 spot last week and delivered, I'd say, an unexpectedly good outing. So they have plugged that right-hander into the number 3 hole this weekend. Auger has not given up a home run in 26 and a third innings this year. In fact, Steven and St. Jah both do a pretty good job of keeping the ball in the park. Now, their bullpen past their top 3 or 4 arms can get a little bit shaky, but they've got some good ones there. Lefty Tyler Davis has been clutch for them. Cam Schulke, a guy who mixes his arm angles, has had a nice season for Mississippi State. Nolan Stevens and Tyson Harden, a lefty and a righty respectively, guys who can really help them. And boy, if they ever got Nate Dom back, who knows how good this staff could be. I think this could be a potential Omaha team, and maybe it could be without him. I think this is a terrific matchup. It is probably maybe the best one of the weekend. In those cases where it's hard to decide, I will take the home team. So in this case, I will take Mississippi State, which I think might be just a little bit the better team anyway. Alabama fans might argue that, and they might be right. But I will take State to win the series. But I think Alabama will probably get one. I would be a little surprised if Alabama gets swept in start. Okay, next up, we have Ole Miss going to Auburn, and this is probably the the least important series of the weekend, given where these teams stand in the regional pecking order. Ole Miss, it would take, I'm not going to say a miracle to get in at this point, and Auburn, it would probably take getting to Hoover and winning the whole thing there, which is a pretty big long shot. But nonetheless, 2 pretty good teams that have just kind of gotten beaten down by the league, which tends to happen in the SEC. Let's start with Ole Miss first. Again, pretty good lineup. The top of the lineup probably better than the bottom half in this case. You've got the headliners here. Jackson Ross, the first base transfer from Florida Atlantic's had a nice year. Some other guys in that lineup of note, Andrew Fisher, the shortstop, or rather the third base transfer, I guess, from Duke has been really good. Ethan Leger, who's in his second year at Ole Miss, has been good. And they've got some other quality hitters, but the bottom half has not quite been what they wanted. Hitting from the catching position when they go with Eli Birch, he's not giving them a lot offensively, but still Ole Miss has got some talent here. I know the pitching is where they really struggle. They're going to go Riley Maddox, Liam Doyle, Mason Nichols this weekend in that rotation. That is righty, lefty, righty. Nichols has been the best guy statistically of that bunch, but he's only thrown 28 and 2/3 innings, so I don't know how long he can go. Maddox, I think, threw pretty well last weekend from what I remember, and Liam Doyle, another guy who's thrown well at times, but my goodness, that bullpen has just been a hot mess. Josh Mallett's the guy that they really, I think, counted on have a big year after coming back from arm injury and missing last year, just has not been the same guy. You look for that bullpen for help. I guess Connor Spencer's their best guy. But he hasn't thrown as much of late. I think that's where Ole Miss struggles, is just when you get into a war of pitching attrition and not enough answers there, and that's been the problem in Oxford so far this season. As for Auburn, this is the team that is 3-18 in the SEC so far, but you got to remember, series of coming. It's at Vandy, Auburn, at A&M, Tennessee and Kentucky, at Mississippi State, and LSU. And they did get the third game of that series last weekend at LSU, and an LSU team that's playing pretty well. Auburn did not have a midweek game, so a chance to maybe rest and reset the pitching there too. But the lineup, 2 guys in that lineup. Ike Irish is one of the better hitting catchers in this league. Cooper McMurray, one of the better hitting first basemen in this league. They have shuffled the lineup lately with some injuries and maybe giving some young guys a chance. Cade Ballou, the freshman lefty outfielder, has hit really well for them lately. So he's a guy that I think has kind of seized the right field spot as Bobby Pierce has been hurt a little bit. Cooper Weiss, the Auburn shortstop who transferred from Miami of Ohio, has had a nice season with the bat. Mason Manners, I think, has been hurt a little bit, but played again this week. So if you can plug him back in left field, that lineup gets a little bit better. It's a fair lineup. I think people will look at Auburn's record of 3 wins and 18 losses in this league and make judgment. But make no mistake, this is a lineup with some veteran guys who can hit. It's been the pitching where Auburn has had some issues. They're going to go Dylan Watts, Tanner Ballman, Connor Myers again this weekend. So Butch Thompson, in a year of pitching uncertainty, is at least sticking with those same 3 guys. I don't know how long any of those guys can go. Myers is the only guy that's pitched over 30 innings of that trio. Their bullpen has also had some issues. Now, Parker Carlson, I think, has pitched decently well of late. If I recall that correctly, Christian Herberholtz can give them some things at times. John Armstrong, same thing, had a bad weekend last weekend. And Chase Alsop, a guy who's pitched out of the rotation a little bit, has pitched well at times. Probably a little better than that 6.85 ERA shows. But, just Auburn has not gotten a lot of answers here lately. Parker Carlson, I think, pitched well last weekend too. But 2 teams that really struggle to pitch throughout an entire weekend. But I think Auburn is played a little bit better than people maybe know. And again, that schedule's been brutal. I'm going to give Auburn the edge this weekend, given that it is playing at home, and the Tigers get maybe a little bit of surprise series win. Now, if Ole Miss really gets this win, Ole Miss really is going to need it because it's trying to get into a regional, and the RPI's got the Rebels in range. I'm just not sure that pitching can hold up long enough for Ole Miss to get there. All right, next up, we've got Vanderbilt at Georgia. The Commodores coming off a really tough series loss at home last weekend to Mississippi State. I think each team scored 15 runs, but Vandy ended up losing that. But the Commodores have not hit consistently well. This is a lineup that just doesn't have a superstar in it. Their best hitter has been catcher Alan Espinal, who's had a surprising season. Troy Leneve, their left fielder, is probably their biggest power bat and has hit a few lately, but has not delivered in that category, I think, the way they had hoped. Jonathan Vastine, their shortstop, is probably one of the better all-around guys in the league. Hits pretty well, fields pretty well. But after that, Matthew Polk's a guy that can hit the ball hard, but it's a lineup that can be pitched to. And there have been a lot of moving parts in there. And Tim Corbin has just not been able to find guys who night in and night out you can count on. Again, some good hitters here, but maybe not any great hitter in this lineup. And that's been a concern for Vanderbilt and Tim Corbin. So is the pitching health. You've seen a lot of guys. In fact, this team has been beaten up on the offensive side too. Jaden Davis, their Sanford transfer at second base, is now maybe out for the year after getting hit in the face with the pitch last weekend. But the pitching is really taking some blows. Devin Futrell, who opened the season in the rotation and just really hadn't pitched much in the last month, finally threw last week, didn't throw great. They haven't named a third starter for this weekend, so we'll see where that goes. J.D. Thompson, who got suspended for that substance issue, he's manned that third spot some and threw a little bit in the midweek. I think this week he could be a candidate for that number 3. But they're 1 and 2. Carter Holton and Bryce Cunningham are really good. Cunningham threw a complete game shutout last week. Holton's got a 4.37 ERA, but he's a better pitcher than that. Just has been a little bit unlucky so far. And the bullpen, they got some arms there, but health is the issue. Ethan McIlvain, their freshman stud lefty, has been out, but they've got some guys. Ryan Ginther, the lefty who closes for them sometimes, has been good. Brennan Cyber's been a nice find as a freshman. Miller Green, freshman lefty, has shown dominant tendencies at times. They've got some other guys in there, but they've got some guys at the bottom end of that rotation and bullpen that have been hurt. So there's still enough left for Vandy to get a series win. But boy, is that going to be a challenge against Georgia, because my goodness, after Tennessee and A&M, and you could even argue Georgia's lineup in there with those other teams, this team can hit. We know about Charlie Condon, hit 30 home runs this year already. He's going to break a lot of records by the time his season is over. But Corey Collins has been a stud too. He's creating about 20 runs per 27 outs per a Bill James formula that I use. He's hit 13 bombs. He's got an on-base percentage of .599. That's crazy. Slugging .800. They've got some other guys in there too. Dylan Goldstein, right fielder, hitting really well. Got a slugging percentage of just under .700, on base over .450. Other guys in that lineup, Slade Alford, Mississippi State transfer, been solid. Colby Branch, their shortstop's got a little pop. He's got 14 home runs. Fernando Gonzalez, their catcher, 8 home runs. Just This is a team that is up there in the top 5 in the country in home runs. They've got a bench that can hit a little bit. Trey Phelps has been productive. Hunter Henry, their backup catcher, or Henry Hunter, can give them some things. Paul Tate's off the bench, the Purdue transfer. This team can hit up and down the lineup, and it can hit for a lot of power. It can take some walks while it is at it. The rotation and the bullpen are where Georgia's got some questions. And boy, folks had some questions last weekend about Christian Moranca, who's been moved out of the rotation, and he will be a bulk relief guy, which he was last weekend, and very important in giving them that controversial win in Game 3 over Texas A&M. Leighton Finley will get that Friday night start. He's got a free pass rate of 9%. That's pretty good. What you don't want to do with Vandy is start giving people free passes, letting them get on the base pass and steal bases. Charlie Goldstein, their number 2, has been a guy that's pitched a lot of good innings at Georgia. So it is not a top half of the league rotation. We don't know who they're going to start in the number 3 spot. That could be Jarvis Evans. That could be Colton Smith, who's been really good. But it's not a terrible rotation either. The bullpen, depending on who's in it, you see Moranca sometimes pitching out of the pen. You sometimes see him starting. Colton Smith probably in that same boat. It drops off after 5 or 6 arms. Brian Ziden, their guy from Penn, who's a right-hander, wasn't as good lately. Saw that ERA balloon up after he'd been pretty, I'm not going to say unhittable, but a pretty tough customer. They got some other guys there, Patty Sack, Josh Roberge, who can pitch a little bit. But it can get ugly from time to time. But when you've got that offense at Georgia, they can just score runs, and that short porch to right where I think it's 310. Now, it's 350 to left, but when you got a guy like Charlie Condon, that's nothing. This is a team that just has hit bombs, and especially at Foley Field, I think that's a bad matchup for Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt does not really want to get into a slugging war with another team, and Georgia is that team. I will take Georgia to win this series, although I think Vandy's good enough to go down there and get. Next up, Texas A&M and Alabama. We'll talk about the visiting Aggies first. With apologies to Tennessee, this is my favorite lineup in the league. I mean, my goodness, you've got a superstar, probably top 10 pick in the draft in Braden Montgomery and right. You got Jace Lavalette, who next year I would think would be a top half of the first round guy, Manning center. You've got Gavin Grovac at third, another guy that when he's a freshman, when his draft year comes up, look out. I would think that he would rank very high on draft boards. Hadn't seen him, but just seen the kid play, and he can really play. And that's not it. Jackson Appel, Ted Burton, 2 of the better hitters in the league at catcher and first base. They've got Ali Camarillo, who can hit for a shortstop and also a terrific fielder. Caden Sorrell, I think it is, has really hit for them lately as they've moved some guys in the lineup. Hayden Schott, their DH, the lefty transfer from Columbia. Good one, too. That they got guys off the bench. Max Kiefer, their backup catcher. They don't use him a lot, but he can hit and has hit when he's been in there. But that 1 through 9, there is not an easy out in that lineup. And teams have found that out pitching to the Aggies so far. By the way, Sorrell, Lavalette, shot lefties. Montgomery's a switch hitter. So really, they've got balance up and down that lineup in terms of handedness. All right. Pitching, that conversation in the rotation starts with Ryan Prager, who's been outstanding. 58 innings, 2.59 ERA, free pass rate 5%. That's elite. Strikeout rate 34%. That's outstanding. Keeps the ball in the park a decent amount. A little bit fly ball heavy, so that could be a concern against LSU. We'll get into the Tigers in just a minute. No, the concern has been their 2 and 3. Justin Lampkin has struggled a little bit lately. He's there too this weekend. He and Prager are both lefties. It looks like they have kicked Tanner Jones out of the rotation for the weekend, or could bring him back in and use him. He struggled of late. Isaac Morton, their number 4 starter, has pitched in the midweek. I don't think they'd bump him into a number 3. They could start a Chris Cortez or somebody like that and go with the committee. And boy, they got the arms to do it. Cortez has had a good year. Evan Aschenbeck has probably been the best reliever in the league. He's pitched 45 innings, got an ERA of $1.60, free pass rate 4%, strikeout rate 32%. Those are just unbelievable numbers, and does a pretty good job of keeping the ball in the park. He does give up a few fly balls, but he's kept them in the park. They got Shane Sadeo. They got Brad Rudis. Those are good guys. They've got Brock Peary, Josh Stewart. They can cover enough innings for the weekend. Now, again, you're a little concerned with the failure of their number 2 and 3 starters lately, but they've scored so many runs and gotten so much out of Aschenbeck and those other guys who can go multiple innings that it really has not mattered. That's why this team is number 1 right now in every poll and every computer that I take a look at. Now let's talk about LSU. I think LSU is sneaking up and has been more like the team we thought it would be in preseason than the team that's been out of the polls for several weeks. They're not ranked anywhere. But you look at some of the computers, they are top 25 in Kenneth Massey, the top 25 in the Diamond Sports rankings, and they got a series win against Auburn last weekend. They got a series win against Missouri the weekend before. And you're going, okay, those might be the bottom 2 teams in the league. They are. But one of them was on the road. Wins are never easy in this league. And, oh, by the way, they've won 4 midweek games in a row, which is a little bit of a testament to pitching depth. The lineup is starting to come on a little bit. It's been very top-heavy. Jared Jones has been one of the more underrated hitters in the league. He's been very productive at first base, 19 home runs. Tommy White got a little bit of a slow start for Tommy White, but he has really come on like gangbusters in recent weeks. He's got 18 home runs. Behind that, they're getting some hitting from Hayden Travinski, one of the better hitting catchers in the league. Michael Braswell has been kind of hit and miss at shortstop in terms of the bat, but can hit. Brady Neal at DH feels like he's come on a little bit lately. Ashton Larson, freshman outfielder who comes off the bench, been super productive. On-base percentage, .453, slugging .564. Maybe LSU's finding some guys there late in the season who can hit a little bit better. And when you've got White at the top and Jared Jones and Travinski, you just need a little bit of hitting out of Neal and some of those other guys, and that is a formidable lineup at that point. I think what I like more about LSU, though, and maybe my reason for optimism is that pitching. Because when Gage Jump and Luke Holman are on, they are about as good as any 1-2 punch in the league. They're going Jump on Friday night and putting Holman in the 2 slot. I think that's a smart move because I think that you will match Jump up against Ryan Prager, and you don't really know what you're going to get. Jump's been great more often than not lately, but Holman's a little bit more dependable. If you get great Gage Jump, hey, maybe you can sneak and win Friday, and then you got your best guy going Saturday, and then you're really feeling much better about things. But that's what they're going to go. They haven't named a 3. I'm going to guess it's Cade Anderson, who I think was their 3 last week. He's a freshman lefty who's gifted. He's struggled like lefties do, but he's kept the ball, or freshman lefties do, but he's kept the ball in the park. Home run rate just over 2%. That comes in pretty handy against this A&M team that can just hit bombs with the best of them. All right, you look down that bullpen, and there's not an outstanding arm there, but there's a lot of them. A lot of guys pitched a lot of ball. Griffin Herring, Nate Ackenhusen, Thatcher Hurd when he's on, Gavin Guidry, Justin Lohr, the Xavier transfer, Sam Dutton, Will Helmers, Christian Little's pitched better of late. There's a lot of options there. It's starting to remind me a little bit of Mississippi State staff a couple of years ago when they won the title, where you had a couple studs at the top. And then you had just a bunch of guys that weren't superstars or even stars, but because you had a lot of lefty and righty options, you could just bring those guys in and mix and match. Now, that hasn't always worked for LSU, but here's my point. They got a lot of guys who pitched a lot of ball, and these guys were all pretty talented out of high school. I think the key, and we're looking at home run rates, Jump 2.0%, Holman 1.2%, Anderson 2.2%, Herring 1.7%, Hurd 2.8%. Helmers hadn't given up a home run all year. I'm not saying that LSU is going to line up and dominate A&M, because that's not going to happen. You against that lineup, I don't care who you are, you're hanging on for dear life most of the time. But here's my point. I think this staff has been sneaky good in some spots, and when they've got Jump going well and Holman going well, they are a tough out for anybody. I'm going to take A&M to win the series on the road. That's tough to do anywhere because A&M's the best team in the country. But I think the slippage in the pitching a little bit at the starting end, and I think LSU coming on in ways that if you're not really locked in and paying attention, you may not have noticed. I think LSU at least gets a game, and I would not be absolutely floored if LSU won the series. I'm not predicting it. I would be surprised, but I'm just going to say I think LSU might be able to match up a little bit better than you think. This will probably get clipped and spread on the internet if it doesn't work out well. But I'm just saying I see some things in the stats that make me think LSU can match up a little bit better. Now, having said that, that's all fun and games to talk about till you see that A&M lineup, and my goodness, they are great. This is one of the best college baseball teams I've seen in a long time. Winning on the road is tough. I'm going to take A&M because it's the better club, but I think that series is a little bit more sneakily interesting than maybe people might guess. Okay, last series, South Carolina going to Missouri. The Gamecocks got an enormous series win last week, knocking off Kentucky in a wild series, got a shutout in game 3. Nobody's done that to Kentucky that I remember. And then got a 15-2 win, I think it was, over East Tennessee State. I've said I think Mark Kingston's team was a little bit better than people perceived, and I think you're starting to see that. Carolina's top 15 in all the computers, 15th ranked at D1, 14th in the coaches poll. I think this is a team that's got a talented lineup, and it's really starting to come on. And let's talk about that lineup. You've got the names Cole Messina, Ethan Petrie have been very productive players in this league. Petrie a little bit down by last year's standards, but still you don't want to pitch to that guy anytime, anywhere. But I think what is catching my eye with South Carolina's lineup is some moves that Mark Kingston has made. Gavin Cassis, he's been moved to third base. Didn't see that one coming, but he's hit better lately. Hit a big home run against Kentucky last weekend. His offensive production has started to inch up. Ethan Petrie back at first base. They've got Kennedy Jones, who's kind of become a full-timer. He's gotten some big hits. The transfer from UNC Greensboro, been a super productive outfielder for them. Blake Jackson, the transfer from Charlotte, had some big hits too. He's kind of moved in and become a full-timer of late. Dalton Reeves has moved into the DH spot. The lefty transfer from Presbyterian looks like he's moved ahead of Tyler Causey for the time being, and so he's been very productive lately. Austin Brindling has started to play some. The transfer from North Florida, he's hit a little bit. I think this is a lineup that's pretty deep, and by the way, they walk like crazy. Everybody on that lineup has got a double-digit walk rate. I think they either lead the league in walks or they're pretty close. So this is a lineup that's going to tax your pitching staff. They're going to make you throw a lot of pitches, and they've got some pop with Messina and Petrie and Jones coming on. So not a fun lineup to pitch to, as Kentucky found out last weekend. Now, the pitching staff has been kind of interesting, but because you can't really pinpoint a stud on the staff. But they've got 8, 9 arms that can throw in a weekend and give you quality innings. They're going to go Roman Kimball in that one spot. I don't expect a lot out of him. Eli Jones has been consistent in that number 2 spot. He's got an ERA just under 4. They haven't named a 3. I'm going to guess it's Dylan Askew, who to me looks like the best of the remaining options. But they got a lot of relievers who can throw some pitches. They got Tyler Pitzer, Garrett Gainey, Chris Veach. Now, they are right-handed heavy. That's one issue. If you're Carolina, you'd like a few lefties out of that bullpen. They've got Gainey and Matthew Becker, who seems like he's been at Carolina for a while. So it's not a great situation, but they've got some arms, and that offense has been good enough lately to get them some wins. Now, let's go to Missouri. And it is kind of easy to dismiss Missouri as an easy win. And clearly on paper, South Carolina's got some more talent. But speaking of lineup changes, you have seen Garrett Jackson make a few lately. Brock Daniels has moved into left field and hit pretty well for them lately. They got Jackson Lovich hitting pretty well and right for them. They are moving some guys around here and there. Danny Corona, I think one of the big things to watch, Corona's production had been awful. He started at Wake Forest last year and was perceived to be a pretty premier bat in the portal. He'd given him nothing really till the last couple of weeks. He's starting to hit. And so, again, this is not a lineup that scares you. It is clearly the 14th best lineup out of 14 teams in this league. But you're seeing some young guys step up and starting to hit a little bit better. Caden Pierce, a guy who's given them things at times. He's a freshman. Mateo Cerna, freshman switch hitting DH. Missouri has hit enough to hang into some games lately, so don't sleep on these guys. Now, the reason they've done it is because they've gotten some pretty good pitching. They will go Logan Lunsford on Friday, Javin Pimental on Saturday, and I don't think he threw against Tennessee. He's been their best arm, and Missouri managed to lose 2 one-run games in Knoxville without him. They have not named a 3. I would presume that's Carter Rustad, but I don't know for sure. Lunsford is the guy who has been good at times, but probably not good enough to be a Friday night starter by SEC standards. Pimental, on the other hand, been really good. He could pitch for just about anybody right now, a lefty. So that game 2 spot with South Carolina is the one that could get a little bit tricky. The bullpen, they've got some good arms there. Daniel Whistler, the lefty. Brock Lucas, lefty's thrown well at times. Ryan Majik, who I think I've mispronounced his name before, the JUCO lefty, kind of their stopper, maybe their go-to guy when you really got to have an out late in the game, and that's the guy that you really want on the hill. He seems like he's that guy. They've got some other guys that pitched a little bit more. Caden Jacoby, JUCO transfers, pitched a little bit more lately. Jacob Peden has, I think, been their closer from Davidson. Little control trouble, not been great. Again, does Missouri match up on paper with most SEC teams? No, it does not. But this is a team that has hung in there on weekends lately. Took a game from LSU, took a game at Georgia, swept Florida 3 weekends ago. Nobody saw that one coming. And then played Tennessee to 2 one-run games in Knoxville. Also, 3 midweek wins in a row over Missouri State and Lindenwood. So little signs of improvement for the pitching in the lineup there. I don't think South Carolina is going to win or going to lose this series at Missouri. Again, I usually lean towards the home team. Carolina clearly the better team, and I think they're able to handle that. But look out for Missouri. If you are Carolina, you go to this series, and boy, you need a win here because Carolina is playing to host a regional. Missouri, by its own right, playing to try to get into Hoover and see if it can do some damage there. Carolina's a better team. I think Carolina will go on the road and win, but don't count this Missouri team out because the last 4 weekends it has won at least one game. 3 of those weekends came that close, and 2 other weekends. I will take Carolina to win, but I think it could be interesting in spots. All right, we'll recap these series when they are done. Best way to see that, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Those things help us out. I'm Chris Lee. We are Southeastern 14, presented by Bet Online.